All right, so today we have the privilege. One of the things that we like to do with our church, recognizing that in our church we have so much talent, so many people with great experience, and what they do in their line of work. And one of the things that we want to do is to use your talents for our edifying, for our growth. So we want to maximize on what God has given to you and sharing with your church. Today we actually begin with that with one of our very great speakers, and she does a great work in what she does. It's Joyce Odidison, and we have some background here, but you would know more about her. Today she's going to have a few minutes to share with you on conflict management, which is the area that she works with. And I want to thank her for accepting to be with us today. She also will have a book for the board members. We've provided that for her as well, that we've been able to get from the work that she does. So today we're happy. Thank you, Joyce, for being with us. Thank you for accepting to share your knowledge, your experience with us. Actually, I must say as well, this is a recommendation from Dr. Rex. Dr. Rex went to a retreat, a health retreat, right? And he came back all excited. The way that he described what he heard there, he said, man, we got to get her. I'm like, well, definitely we will. And today is, like I said, our very first time that we will be, at least since I've been here, that we will be using your talents to share. Like I said, many of you have other areas that you'll be working with. Further on, we will also be using those. So today with you, Joyce Odidison. Can you put your hand together for her as she comes on? Thanks, Joyce.
Good morning. Thank you, Pastor. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Haven't you been learning a lot this week?
Yes.
This weekend, especially, right? So most of us here are leaders, and we have our groups, and we want to go back and put all of that into practice, right?
Sure.
Well,
Yes.
interestingly, we want to do that, and we should do that. You're probably sitting there and thinking, I know this person isn't here and that person isn't here, but how do we pass that information on to them, and how do we get them motivated and excited to do that work? Well, guess what? Satan also have a plan. He knows that you're thinking that, and he is going to put every obstacle in your way to prevent that from happening. You know that, right? I tell my children every day, you're beautiful, you're amazing, God has such an awesome plan for you. But Satan has one too. So you get to decide which one you want to choose. So those of you who have been to a workshop with me, you know I'm a conflict analyst, and this is what I do. I've been doing for 22 years. So today I put a few slides together, and I wanted us to look at what happens in group dynamics. I'm going to be talking about different stages of groups. So we all take on our new roles this year. It's 2019, and we're going to start in new groups. I know for us on the board, we have new board members. As elders, we have a new team. So we're going to be going through a process of a group process. And so I'm going to be talking about what happens and some of the conflicts that can occur in that group process, and some of the things we can do. And as a leader, how to know when to intervene and what strategies to use. Does that sound like a plan? We're going to try to do that in 45 minutes. Let's get busy. Okay, so the question is, have you ever been part of a group? We all. Put your hand up. Okay. Have you ever been part of a group conflict? How was it? Did you get things done? A lot of time was wasted, right? And it takes energy. And sometimes, I think Pastor preached a sermon a while back that, we get that sambalat, that person that the enemy gets into and gets everybody stirred up. And it could be one person. One person can derail the group process. It could be one person, it could be several people. So whether you've been part of a group or whether you haven't been part of a group, you know that some of these things will happen, right? So let's Let's look at some of the group dynamics that we're going to get into. Every group you go into is going to be diverse because we're all very different. And one of the things I call that in my book, I call it the belly button syndrome. It means that we're all very different, we're very diverse, but you know what? We do need to get to understand each other. We need to work with each other because at the end of the day, we need people, we need each other. We're social. God created us with a central lobe so we can connect with each other. And when we go through the process in our groups, we learn how to work better with others. So there is always a potential for conflict in every group. And usually I say conflict is a catalyst for change. So conflict can create awareness, it can teach us some of the things that we need to do. It can get us excited, but it also gets us agitated. It sends disconfirming information about some of the things that are happening. Should we need to change? Should people have different roles? Are we communicating the right way? So all of these things can be part of why we have a group conflict. And sometimes what we do when a conflict happens is we respond and we lash out at each other without knowing what the reason is. So what we're going to do is get some time and go into all the different pieces for the group. I'm going to flick through here so we can move forward because we have shorter time. So I'm not going to go through all the slides. So what would happen if we fight with each other, we bully each other, we harass each other, we gossip about each other, and we disrespect each other in our group? What would happen? We would get a lot done, would be really happy, right? No. And that's not God's plan, right? God created us actually. God created us to be loved. We were created to be loved. That is why when someone disrespects us, or someone calls us a bad name, or does something mean to us, we feel badly. Because God did not create us to be abused. We were designed for love. And that's what we want to do in our group process. So one of the things I'm going to help you to do is to analyze your group. Do we belong to a group? I'm not going to get you into exercises this morning because we don't have time. This is going to be information. And we're going to build some consensus learn how to build consensus within our groups. So there is a guy named Tuckman, and he has developed a group process, and I think this is the only slide that this light, so we will move through this. There are 3 processes, 5 steps in his group process. Now I'm going to make sure that this works. Okay. The first one is forming. And in the forming stage, that's where the group gets together. Then there is the storming stage where the group has conflict. And then of course there is the norming stage where rules are, and then performing where we start to work together. So we're going to touch on all of those pieces as we go through. And one of the things that we want to do is understand the process. So when we're informing, we are not aware of each other, we don't know much about each other, and things are up in the air. Let's go into the forming stage and spend most of our time here, and then we're going to go into the conflict stage. So in this stage, as you can see, the birds were flying and they're in a formation, and it works really well when we're forming. In this stage, what happens is that we have a high desire to be accepted. We want the people around us to like us. It's just a natural, normal human process to want to be accepted. We want to, of course, avoid controversy and conflicts, so we don't talk about the things that are happening. We don't deal with things. There's a low motivation to pursue serious issues because people are sort of we're gauging. We want to know, how will that person respond to this? What will happen? So when you go into your groups, whatever group you're leading out in or you're participating in this year, you're going to find that most people are quietly just sizing up each other, trying to understand, trying to get the lay of the land and understand each other. It's normal, it's a human process, we go through that. It's not very task-oriented at that time because people are going to spend a lot of the time trying to read each other. So some group processes, what we do to move this along is that we do some different assessments and get the process moving. So some of the things you can do in this stage to move that process through is you can do some icebreakers where people get to know each other. You can get people to start sharing a little bit about themselves, some of their personal, what makes them, what motivates them to be part of that department, what are they looking for, what are some of the goals. And one of the pieces that I do, I actually get them to set an intention for themselves. So what intention do you have for this group? What would you like to see get out? What supports do you need? And how can we help you to be your best in this group? So when we're going through our group processes, we help our group members to move through this process quickly, faster. It can take, there is no time limit on how much this can take. It can take longer in different groups, but if you understand the process, you can move it along faster so people start warming up, because really not much is getting done the longer you stay in this phase. So if we have situations where a group isn't moving along, we can come in and disrupt it. So as part of my job is to create conflict as well. And so we move them through in that process. Conflict that happens within that process is within that stage, in that forming stage, usually are when people start, feeling, I don't trust that person, I don't like that person, this person is this person have a big ego. These are some of the things we hear in that stage. And one of the things we encourage people to do in that stage is one of the things I call responsible communication. Now this is more than effective communication. It's one of the pieces I talk about in my book as well, is when we start thinking about what are we going to say, why we're going to say it, when, and then plan to fix it. Because a lot of times we open our mouth and it doesn't come out the way we want to. So what are you going to say after that? How are you going to fix it? That's the responsibility part to it that we added here. Be accountable. If you're given a role, do it. If you're given something to do and it's overwhelming or you cannot do it and you've prayed about it, then ask somebody else to pray with you, or go to that leader and say, you know what? I don't think I'm the right person to do that. Because what often happens is that other people get upset because Joe said he was going to do this and he didn't do it. And we've been waiting and we can't do anything. And so we see a lot of that kind of conflict in this stage of the group. So if you cannot do that thing, let that person know as soon as possible. If there is an obstacle or if there is something in your way, there are going to be accidents and there will be circumstances beyond your control. But if you know that you're not going to be able to deliver, be upfront and let them know. And they're, of course, creating opportunities to build trust. If you are accountable and you do the things you say you were going to do, people will start to trust you. And people will know that they can rely on you. And at that point, you can start building trust. And of course, tell the truth, be on time, be punctual, all of those little things we do. And we have a whole piece just on building trust. Here's a piece on responsible communication, because it's a newer concept and one that I designed. So I usually just give some little pieces on here. So being clear and direct and purposeful about your communication. Deal with the consequences of your communication, like, coming back. Check your attitude, tone, cadence, and words. And of course, take ownership to fix things. So those are the quick little pieces. The next stage is the storming stage. This is the exciting stage, I call it, because this is my world. So in the storming stage, important issues begin to get noticed. This is when we notice that, Harry didn't complete the agenda, and the leader didn't follow through, and we really don't have a leader. Who is our leader? Do we have a social leader, or is it the elected leader? And those kinds of things that happening, we start to feel those kinds of displeasure about some of the things that are happening, and we feel irritations that are glossed over. We sometimes now, those things are starting to come out. Lack of clarity on roles and responsibility. We start to see people presenting different competitors and avoider behavior or conflict behavior styles. And we push to get rules and regulations, and there's a desire to see more control. This is where we're like, who is the leader here? You need to fix this. So as a leader, you know you're in the storming stage when your group members come and say, you need to fix her. You need to keep him quiet. You know, people are starting to, shake up. So you're going to be in that stage. So what usually happens in this stage, how we reduce conflict, is practice open communication. Don't have meetings outside the meeting. I know we are a church, we like to do that, we like to talk to people, but be careful that you're not having a meeting outside the meeting where you're having a meeting just with 1 or 2 people.
That was what Satan did with the angels in heaven.
Amen. Yes, Satan had meeting outside the meeting in heaven. You understand that? Yeah. So it's one of his strategies, and we find ourselves into it. And this is good-hearted people, right? We're not bad people. We're good church members. And somebody comes to you and you just want to talk to them and make them feel better. But what you end up doing is having a meeting, and what you say out there, they think it's now for the whole group, right? And so things start getting a little bit shaky. Planning for cooperation. When you're leading a group, you should plan for cooperation. And what that means is that you come with a mindset and an intention that everyone is here and that everyone have the plan of working together. And if not, then you're going to invite them. So one of the quick ways to plan for cooperation is to ask people what they think they can best do, right? Where do you think you can add value to what we do? What do you think you can do best, fastest, and you're the best at? Once you've done that, people feel that they have a voice. And so there is more onus for them to actually step up to the plate and commit to what it is that they've said that they can do. So we get them the opportunity to do that. Of course, don't judge or assume. Ask questions. There is nothing more destructive to a group process than when we start assuming we know why people are doing what they're doing, or we know what they mean. If somebody says something to you, and even if it sounds like I'm not sure what they mean, just ask them. I don't think I quite understand what you meant by that. Take some time and ask, because if we don't, we're going to make assumptions, and sometimes we make the wrong assumptions, and guess what? Guess who's in the roaring lion telling us, oh, this is what they really mean? Can you imagine? How dare they do that or say that, right? So just stop and just say that noise, la 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 la, I don't want to hear that. Let me just ask the person what they mean, and we can move from there. Sounds like a plan? Yes. Friendship is good. Extend that hand of friendship to the people in your group, because you're going to have people that you've never worked with before, you've never really sat down or had a meal with. So find ways to create friendship. Part of what we do, we do the potluck, but as a small group, you might want to have some time to eat together and get to know each other, get to know each other's family, welcoming to others. And you're going to need more than the people that the church elected on your board. So you might need to go there and reach new people. So go, find them and talk to them. Invite them into your group, and of course encourage your members to do the same. Well, we have a whole thing on forgiveness. Forgiveness, really forgiveness. How many times did Jesus say we should forgive? Exactly. Is there anybody in this church that you've forgiven 20 times already? So you got a ways to go, right? So let's just remember that. You can start counting. 70 times 7, so there's a long way to go. And again, that's that belly button. We're all imperfect. None of us are perfect, so we're going to stumble. All right. So let's go into the Norman stage. And this is the stage where we are getting busy, we're doing things, right? We're starting to formalize, we have rules, we sort of know who is leading now. I know who's leading the group, I know, right? The leader has established themselves. We have a frame of reference. Right? If you don't know what that is, your leader should come up with a frame of reference of what your group is about. What do we do? What is our mission? What is our vision? And I know we did part of that in our leadership process. That helps to reduce conflict in your group, right? So once you have that, an agenda, how often are you going to meet, right? Those kinds of things are very, very important, and they help your group to norm a lot quicker. If you can start your group process with some of these pieces in there, you're going to reduce a lot of the conflict and a lot of the contention among your group and dissatisfaction, and you're going to reduce a lot of the issues. One of the pieces that I want to touch a little bit on is collaboration and consensus, and we do entire days on teaching collaboration. But consensus is another one that people think in order for us to have consensus, everyone in the room has to agree. Actually, that is not the true essence of consensus. In consensus, it means that everyone has had an opportunity to understand where we're going and to voice their concerns, and their questions have been answered in a respectful way. And so the majority can then lead. So consensus doesn't mean that everybody have to agree for us to move forward. And sometimes that misnomer is spread around and people say, well, I didn't agree and I don't know. So we can lessen that by just educating ourselves on consensus. Means that we have a majority of people that are in agreement, and that by consensus we actually going back and reaching to everyone and making sure everyone has had an opportunity to understand why we're doing what we're doing and why we're going forward with it. And there are always going to be people who don't necessarily agree with what we're doing. One of the things to watch for in this process, in this stage, is where people actually start becoming very cohesive, right? We start to feel good about each other, we like each other, and we're going to now start protecting our turf. This is where groupthink sets in. And that means we are becoming suspicious of other people. We don't want other people to join our team. They're just going to disrupt us. And there's a reason for that. Because all of these stages, anytime you bring somebody new into your team, you're going to go right back to the forming stage. So that happens when you have a new member on your board, you have a new committee member, you have a new pastor. All of those, every time you bring in a new person on your team, you're going to go right back to the forming stage, because each person brings a different energy and dynamic to the group. And when that happens, just know that that's what's going to happen. Don't say, oh, that person come, and since they come, they've caused conflict in our group, or everybody's changed, and so the dynamics will change, will shift about. So as a leader, be prepared for that. And inform your people and bring that person along by asking them what it is they need and how can they be part of this group quickly and get them up to speed. So you can spend some time as a leader bringing them up to speed of the group process and what to expect, so that you can reduce the friction when you bring in a new person into the group. All right, how do we manage conflict in this group? Well, we need to practice collaborative dialogue, and this is the piece that I teach on collaborative dialogue, and we have a whole program on that. So it's listening to understand. Now there's a difference between listening and listening to understand, right? In a collaborative dialogue, we listen with our whole being. And we spend time teaching empathic listening, and we have whole courses on it because of the work that we do, and we work with people who are so highly emotional. It's a skill that we have to develop, to listen to that person, attend to that person, right? So we're attending not just with our ears, but we're picking up on the emotions, we're sensing some of the other issues going on, the body language, and we're asking questions, right? We're respecting the person, and we're not just silent, but we're also giving voice to what we're hearing and what we're seeing and what we're understanding. So this gives us an opportunity to dialogue in a much more collaborative way and give that person an opportunity to understand our heart as well. So it's a heart-to-heart conversation. And of course, one of the things that's really important in collaborative dialogue is suspending judgment. No judgment. it's all okay. So tell me more about this. So what I'm understanding is, and we listen in a respectful way, and we don't make, we suspend any judgment. We can take time in collaborative dialogue to say, let me think about that. Let me sleep on that and get back to you. Can we come back to that next week, or can we set a time to review? And you may have to do that, because sometimes if we just come up with the first thing that comes to mind, it's not necessarily the way we want to go, or we may have missed other things. So it's important to suspend judgment, suspend those decision making, and then give yourself both that time to go back and reflect on what has happened, and then come back. And collaboration takes a longer time, but the value that comes from that process is very, very important. Now we get to the other stage, which is the performance stage. And we all want to be there, right? That's where we want to be. Once you start, honest goodness, if I am part of a group, that's where I want to be right away from day one, right? You're wasting my time otherwise. And so I have to do a lot of self-management to not get up and go, because I want to be here. I'm just that type of person. I like to be doing things. And we all have different styles, so we need to know that. Once you understand that for yourself, then you know how to manage yourself in the group process. That is one of the most difficult part of conflict management, is self-management. And we can teach a whole lot of workshop on that. So what is the performance stage? I guess I didn't quite have that color though. So there's a high level of interdependence that is realized by group members. You know, interdependence means I know that I can depend on you, and you know you can depend on me. There is that trust. When you're at that place, it is such a peaceful place to be, because you can really work together. There is high flexibility, trust, and trust is a common occurrence here. And in here we said, there is no, not even I can read this one. I have to go really close. Mutual understanding and freedom, right? And there's a lot of freedom that comes from mutual understanding. When that happens, we know that if we say something and they don't quite understand it, they will come back to us and ask the question. So there's freedom in that. Right, thanks, Pastor. There is seamless interchange of rules and responsibilities, meaning that we understand that because it's, you know, your job to play the piano, and you're not here, I also am going to learn that if you're not here, I can fill in for you. So you don't have to be stressed and worried that, oh, you know what, there's nobody here to play the piano, so we're just not going to have that. So we all come in and learn and support each other in our various roles so we can work efficiently. There is a high group morale, there is a group identity, and there is loyalty in the group. Right? We are taking care of each other. There's equality, shared responsibility. No people that are not doing what they're supposed to do, don't show up for meetings, leave the job undone. That is not part of a performing group. I mean, you see performance, right? You go to a performance. People put on their top when they're performing, and that's what it is when your group is at a high performance stage. There's a high level of effectiveness. Things get done because we anticipate the needs of others. We anticipate what needs to happen, and we start working beforehand to ensure that those things are occurring. So in this stage, it doesn't mean that conflict still can't happen in this phase, unfortunately, because humans have belly buttons, right? And conflict is a catalyst for change. And thank God for conflict. And I will tell you why. Because we could get very comfortable in this stage, right? It sounds quite comfortable. And we could stay there forever. And so we wouldn't learn new things. So when conflict happens in this stage, it, of course, reminds us to go back, right? Help people to voice concerns in a respectful way, right? Collaborate with your group members, build consensus, share willingly, be willing to make sacrifice for the success of the group. That means, you know what, I will do this because it's going to make all of us better. It's for the greater good. And if we don't have conflict in this stage, we get, especially in our church, remember we were talking about getting comfortable? God doesn't want us to be comfortable. This is not our home. We're not supposed to be comfortable here. So although we want to get to that stage where we're performing at a high level, we never want to be comfortable. So when conflict occurs in our boards or in our leadership team or as elders, we need to stop. We need to pray. We need to say, okay, God, what are you telling us? What do we need to do differently? What are you bringing to our attention? Because it's obviously an opportunity for us to change and grow. If we don't have conflict, and as a conflict analyst and someone who works in conflict, I tell people conflict is very helpful for us as humans because it helps us to grow. If you're having conflict in your relationship, you need to ask yourself, do I need to become a better person? Do I need to listen better? What do I need to do? How do we grow through this so that we can have a better relationship? So those are some of the things that we need to do. Of course, we need to look for the ego here, where people may be pursuing personal ambitions at the expense of the group. So that's another area where we can identify for solutions for conflict in this stage. Now, you may be saying, as a leader, how do I know when to intervene in a conflict? How many of you know when to intervene in a conflict? When is it that people are going to work things out? And that is one of the questions we get asked a lot. And I have a keynote that I do just on that. I'm going to share a model that I did. This is the model I use in my master's thesis. And I call it the conflict progression theory. Sometimes we just need a better process. And we don't know that we do. So this model helps us to get a better understanding of what it is. And in my book, I've given it some pretty names. So there are 3 phases to the conflict progression model. The first is the conceptual phase. And in this phase, it's called, you make me feel horrible. And this is and we'll go into that a little bit more. And the central phase is the alignment phase. And this is where I will tell my friends. That's what I call it in the book. And in phase 3, which is the protracted phase, it says, we will make you pay. So let's dig a little deeper into this. In the conflict progression model, this is what it looks like. So it starts here in the conceptual phase. Now, I'll just tell you, this is the phase where, you know what? I came into church this morning and I said hi to Daisy and she didn't answer me. Like, what is going on with that woman? Huh? What did I do? Anyway, maybe it wasn't me. Next day I came in and I said hi to Daisy and she did not answer me. I'm like, well, she really got it up now. Like, what is going on? Well, next thing, we have a meeting and I'm like, you know what? I can't be bothered with her. I'm not going to pay any attention to her. Oh, this year's gonna say, what's going on with Joyce? Why is Joyce acting so strangely? So what does she do? She's like, neither of us have had the opportunity of taking the initiative to say, Daisy, what's up? I noticed you didn't answer me. Or Daisy like, Joyce, you're acting strange. What's going on? You notice we didn't do that. We have our own conversation going on in our head and our own assumption about what's really happening. When the information is with each other, and we need to have that dialogue. So, let's say Daisy and Joyce didn't have that conversation, but they're still having that conversation going on in their head, instead of the one they should be having to each other. So Joyce now goes and she says, Caroline, I have to tell you what's been going on with Daisy. She just started ignoring me. I think she's got it in for me. I don't know what I did to her. And guess what? Caroline said, you know what, Joyce? She did the same thing to Rex the other day. He complained about the same thing to me, and I don't know what's up with her. Let's ask him what he did and how he resolved it. So we got Rex together, Caroline and I, and we're talking. And Rex says, you know what? Yeah, she gets like that sometimes. She gets all moody and she just ignores people, and I don't know what's up with her. So now Joyce and Caroline and Rex are, we got a whole little thing going, and now when we see Daisy, we're like, oh, yeah, did you see her this morning? Did she say hi to you? No, another week. Oh, wow. Anyway, so Daisy is noticing that, and she's like, well, Sister Dawkins, you need to pray with me because I don't know what I did, Joyce. And Joyce started being really cold to me. And I'm kind of noticing that she's spending all the time with Caroline and Rex. I always feel as if they're talking about me. I don't know what's going on. And Sister Dawkins said, you know what? I'm going to pray with you, but don't worry with that Joyce and her people. She have an attitude. She does that. Look, she did it to Kay. Look, Joyce was telling me that, Daisy is telling me she had the same problem she had with Joyce here, and so now Daisy and Sister Dawkins and Kay have a little heart-to-heart. And next Sabbath they're like, did she say hi to you? Is anything better? No. So what just happened? We call that phase 2 alignment. Because in phase 1, Daisy and Joyce were supposed to have had a conversation. Nothing happened. Nobody talked to each other. So now the conflict has aligned. We've gone through that alignment. And now we're getting our teams and our groups. And that's how division happens in our congregation. So we have people who are not talking to each other because they tell their own stories to each other without we know there are like 7 sides to every story. And some stories I've heard, there is just so far away from the real truth. So why don't we do that? It's so easy for us to align. It's so easy for us to tell others our problems with others instead of the person that we need to be talking to. So this is what happens when the conflict has moved from the conceptual phase, which is where Joyce and Daisy seems to have a misunderstanding, and instead of talking to each other, they go and talk about each other with others. And those others have now joined and is sympathetic to them. Do you know we have mirror neurons as humans? So if you're hurting, I hurt for you. It's God give us that so we can have empathy and compassion. But the devil has turned it upside down, so we use it to gang up on each other and beat up on each other, right? So we use those strength and energy that God has given us. And in this central phase conflict, unless someone steps and say, what is going on here? We need to come together as a group and talk about this. Joyce and Daisy, you guys need to have a conversation. Come, let's pray with you and talk with you. And you know what? We're not going to leave Caroline and Rex and Sister Dawkins and, Sister Kay out of it. We're going to bring everybody. Let's talk about this and resolve it. Because that's what Satan is good for. He is so excited when that's happening. He's like, yes, let me stir them up. Right? Daisy goes out to her car and she sees mud on her car. She's like, it must be one of them. I just washed my car and it's one of them. Right? Because that's what happens. If we don't resolve it, we're going to move to the protracted phase, right? That escalation is going to happen. Where now, when Daisy goes up to sing, what is she going to say? I wonder how Joyce is going to, let me make sure I'm looking good so she doesn't see anything on me to talk about, Instead of thinking about let me get my heart ready for God, we're so concerned now with our enemy in church. And this is where enmity set in. And we start becoming so confused. We become conflicted. In this stage, usually when we interview people in this stage, when we ask them why the conflict has started, they can't even remember. Because what happens in this stage, it's no longer about that initial Joyce and Daisy isn't talking anymore. Because in this stage, we now move to having disputes over, like, well, Rex, well, Sister Dawkins need to sing and Rex didn't show up to do the practice, and now I can't believe he's done that. So it's moved in that protracted phase where we are now having several little disputes over different things, but that main conflict hasn't been resolved. So this is where, as a leader, you need to understand the different phases, and we can go more and more into that, but if you can read about it in the book. The reality is we need to learn how to resolve those conflicts. And these are some of the pieces you're going to be seeing in that phase. We're going to see that awareness of emotional discontent, anger, increased stress, anxiety, blaming, fear. And so some of the resolution strategies as a leader here is anger management, stress management for people, calm them down, and personal development. Would you believe that is one of our go-to for conflict resolution, is actually helping people to get their stuff together, getting their life together. Because if you have a lot of turmoil and stuff going on in your life, you will pass on to other people, and you find you're more discontented and irritable with others. And we have a whole other process on that. And then, of course, we move to the central phase, conflict, and these are some of the things: miscommunication, distrust, suspicion, blame, threat, stereotypes, reinforced discrimination, grievances if it's in the workplace. Some of the resolutions here we do, of course, personal development. We do a lot of coaching, helping people, skill building, group intervention, negotiation, mediation also works as well in this phase. And then in the protracted phase is the culture of conflict and enmity has set in, and it's a longer process. It's not a quick fix. The more the conflict has escalated, the longer the time it takes to resolve. So it's important as a leader to try to help people. When your people are coming to you, like, I don't know what's going on with Joyce, I don't know why she's treating me this way. That's a sign to quickly say, you know what, did you have a conversation with her? What's going on? Did you know what's going on? Would you like me to sit with you and just talk to that person to find out what's going on so we can work through it? If you leave it and it goes on to that third phase, then you really at that point, sometimes we have to recommend that people move from one campus to the next or move to another division, because that place of enmity, it takes a lot of prayer, a lot of work, a lot of grace to move people from that very protracted conflict. I mean, just on a global scale, think of some of the global conflicts where people just can't get along. That's when they are in that protracted phase. So we can spend a lot more time on this, but my time is up. Let me see, what else do I have here? So some of the things to do in managing conflict with words is choose your words. Choose words that are non-confrontational. Choose words that invite dialogue, right? Ask people questions. How can we resolve this? And of course, generate trust. Do your best to generate trust and elicit collaboration. Amen. So the desire to work together and increase participation, show up, do the things that you need to do, help. And instead of you want to pick a fight with me, ask this, tell people, maybe this is not a good time to discuss this. Can we come up with a better time? Because we don't want to try to have conversation when we're angry and we're upset or we're frustrated, because the devil will get us to say the wrong thing. And so we want to sometimes sleep on it and say, you know what? Let me go and pray about this and I will come back and we can then work it out. Okay, thank you so much for your attention.